Hello, world of YouTube. I'm trying to address the changes in this video, like the different couch with the different lighting setup, because I'm going to be getting my top 11 video game soundtrack compilations that is a sequel to my video game soundtracks list that came out last month, but let's go ahead and jump into it.
Number 11. I think one of the things I'm really happy about with my listening log updates is I get to talk about other genres of music that I haven't talked about on the channel before, like electronic music, and like you guys may have seen in recent reviews, I do really like electronic music outside of like industrial and stuff. I'm a huge fan of dance music, and I like a lot of the artists that are on this. Where I think this is a step above Wipeout is the musical selection fits the tone of the game a little better. There was a lot more house and almost trance tracks on the first soundtrack. It didn't feel this hard-hitting. While some of the bands that were on the first soundtrack are here as well, like the Chemical Brothers and Prodigy, I think that the songs that they use from those bands even fits the game a little better. I like the presence of Underworld and Photech and Orbital in here as well. I really fucking love We Have Explosive, the basically the theme for the franchise, and I think that it fits this kind of aggro futuristic racing game very well. There's a lot of really good electronic tracks here, and this is a great slice of great 90s electronic bands from their day. There's maybe a couple that aren't here that could be here. Like, they could throw a little Fatboy Slim on here, and it would fit just fine. But this is a good starter kit for lesser known electronic producers and bands. I basically love this for the same reason I love the Mortal Kombat film soundtracks. And while I love the first Mortal Kombat film, Annihilation is shit, but it still has a great soundtrack. Number 10. Do you guys want to see some genuine nostalgia for me? Now I know the first thing you guys think of when you see me is, yeah, this guy's a fucking gearhead, right? He tunes his car every chance he gets. He, at least goes over it once a week. And you'd be absolutely right about that. I mean, look at me. All jokes aside, I do have a soft spot in my heart for gearhead-centric games like Sega GT 2002 and the Need for Speed franchise and games like that. I've played them very casually for a large chunk of my life, and over the last couple of years I have kind of dipped my toes back into the genre, and it is still a lot of fun. And I, like a lot of America, was captivated by at least the first two Fast and the Furious films. I mean, Ludacris is right the fuck there! How can you not love that? I'm getting sidetracked. The Need for Speed games in particular shaped a lot of my music tastes. Need for Speed Most Wanted helped solidify my love for bands like Mastodon, but I have a soft spot in my heart for the Underground soundtrack, and I think it's because I invested a lot of time into this game, and it's not just because of Lil Jon and these head boys to get low. I do fucking love this song, and hearing that in the first menu is very nostalgic for me, but it's also got the Only by Static X. It's got a good Rob Zombie cut, a good Rancid cut. It's got non-hip-hop tracks covered well and good hip-hop tracks. There aren't many bands on here or artists that I would say are my favorites of all time, but these tracks in particular just hit home to me in such a good way. Number 9. Now, like fixing cars, you could probably take one look at me and guess, well, this guy's not really very active, is he? And you'd be right. But I do like to dance. I've done it a lot on the channel. And DDR, like those type of games, holds a soft spot in my heart. I have very fond arcade memories of playing DDR, and the soundtracks to these games are really, really nice. The reason why I picked DDR Ultramix is because it's the one that I had at home when I was younger, and so while it has the DDR staples that everybody knows, its exclusive songs, specifically Ready Steady Go, featured in the hit spy movie The Bourne Identity, holds a soft spot in my heart. I really love this game. I'm never going to be this guy, but I do really enjoy playing DDR. I think it's a fun time. It's a good way to be active if you aren't the most active guy in the world. And yeah, that's really all I got. Number 8! So Rez is a really interesting beast on this list. Its soundtrack is so much more embedded into its gameplay than anything else I'll be talking about today, and that's why I'm using the actual game audio as opposed to splicing clips of the game with music underneath it. What sets this game apart outside of its soundtrack being these more trance-like instrumentals that suit its zen-like atmosphere, frankly, is the songs evolve with the character in the game. So the more that you succeed, the more layers the song builds, and it creates this dance atmosphere that builds and gets more exciting the more you level up, the more you progress through the game. And that's what I think is so genius about this game. Don't get me wrong, I love a lot of rhythm games that came out before the Guitar Hero and Rock Band Boom, but Rez is without a doubt the most interesting and the most surreal experience you'll get from a rhythm game. And I think it's enhanced by its trance-like atmosphere. Like I said, this game is very zen in appearance and an approach, as you saw by the opening cutscene and by these visuals. It's very cerebral. It stews with you. And I think that using trance music as kind of the foundation and letting you build this kind of trance orchestra, if you will, this trance arsenal, if you will, is a great choice by the game designers. I love the tracks here, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of trance, I still find a lot of enjoyment with these cuts, and I think that, again, it fits perfectly. And it's just, I couldn't recommend a rhythm game more than I could Rez. If you've never played this game, you owe it to yourself, especially if you love rhythm games or you like music in video games. This is such an interesting experience that is fun to go through. It's a little on the pricier side if you want to get the original ports of it, but any remakes that have come out have done it justice as well. Just get your hands on it and experience this game like it's meant to be experienced, because me cutting up the segments that I am doing doesn't show you just what the music in this game does as far as being integrated into the game itself. Number 7. Now I already hear the comments now. Don't get me wrong. I know you guys are thinking, why not this Tony Hawk or that Tony Hawk? 3 was so much better. 4 had this track. What are you, crazy? No, I'm not, and I have a valid reason for why I put this here. Yes, I love a lot of the Tony Hawk soundtracks. I love a lot of the games. Don't get me wrong. If I were to shout out 2 other soundtracks, the second one, An American Wasteland, also helped me formulate my music tastes that I have today, or a lot of my earlier music tastes. But the first Tony Hawk laid out such a great foundation with its soundtrack as far as an amazing collection of tracks that helped solidify my music tastes that I'm forever indebted to the soundtrack. I mean, it has my favorite Dead Kennedy song. It has Superman by Goldfinger, which is a bona fide ska classic. It has Psychovision by Suicidal Tendencies. And it has one of my introductions to one of my favorite bands, Primus and Jerry Was a Risco Driver. And one of the most underrated tracks of the 90s, the Ernie's Here and Now. Ernie's record with this song on it is so goddamn good, and nobody pays attention to it. Nobody cites it as a late 90s gem that it is. It's got a lot of that punky edge that I love from the Tony Hawk games. Yes, there's not as much hip-hop as there should be, given the other soundtracks have a great selection of hip-hop tracks, but this just pleases the inner skate dork in me. The kid that used to skateboard around in Seattle, this is where I got my start, and I can't help but get so caught up in this soundtrack anytime I play the game, anytime I listen to Police Truck or Jervis or Race, any of the songs on here immediately remind me of the soundtrack. And that's another reason why I love this thing. It's so good, and just let me have this. All the other soundtracks also good, but this just started it all, and it started it fantastically.
Number 6. Some might see this as a cheat, and while I can maybe see your argument because Hideki Naganuma is still all over this thing, the difference between this soundtrack and Jet Set Radio's is that Jet Set Radio did have other songs that weren't Hideki Naganuma's, but I wanted to highlight his contribution specifically because they outshined everybody else on the soundtrack for the most part, outside of like 2 songs. This soundtrack has a lot more of a balance. The new Hideki Naganuma songs are great, and the remixes of the Jet Set Radio songs that are present here are also fantastic. But the other licensed music they got in here are just as good. The Latch Brothers tracks that are on here are fantastic. Chibomato's Birthday Cake is on here, which is my introduction to what I would think one of the most underrated bands of the 90s. Scapegoat Wax's Aisle 10 is another really fun track. There's a lot more here that suits the game just like the music in Jet Set Radio did, but it's spread out more than just one guy's contributions. With that being said, I like this for the same reason I like the Jet Set Radio soundtrack, so if you saw my last video, it's pretty much the same, only more artists.
Number 5.
So, revelation time. There was an entry last list where I hadn't played the game. There's an entry this list where I hadn't played the game. And unlike a lot of my generation, I didn't play the 3D Grand Theft Auto games. I played the old 2D Grand Theft Auto games when I was younger, but I never played 3, I never played San Andreas, and I never played this game, Vice City. However, while making a list of video game compilation soundtracks, I cannot deny the significance of these soundtracks and the diversity within them. And this soundtrack is just all of the 80s. You want the 80s? You've got the 80s with this soundtrack. It's got everything from Megadeth and Ozzy and Quiet Riot to Tears for Fears deep cuts, Toto deep cuts, Spanish all-stars like Mongo Santa Maria. It's got Michael Jackson deeper cuts. It's got a lot here. It's got disco rap. Every single facet of the 80s music is represented in some way on this soundtrack, and that is super commendable. While I do like the rotating soundtrack that's Grand Theft Auto Online, and I actually own Grand Theft Auto 5 and play it, as a guy who likes 80s music, this does a lot for me. This is my shit, and it actually makes me want to go and play this game from the soundtrack alone. It is so cool.
Number 4. While I can cite Guitar Hero 3 as a significant point in gaming music crossovers and getting people into a lot of really good bands, the idea behind the soundtrack of DJ Hero is so much more interesting and more indebted into my own style, because I fucking love mashup culture. Super Mash Brothers is my shit. Kids Explosion Shit Computer is one of my favorite electronic-tainted albums ever made. You guys already know Neil C.C. Ariga is my guy, and don't even get me started on my own contributions into the genre. Don't get me wrong, this is a much more accessible point in mashup culture, but I don't mind it, because before this, all we really had was the Grey Album by Danger Mouse, which is, albeit very accessible, a little one note. This at least has a lot of variety in its sounds, and a lot of genres are fused together in really interesting ways. You know, I think it's cool that Foo Fighters are even an artist mentioned in this. I think it's cool that they've mashed up old funk tracks together. They've fused indie rock with modern R&B. There's a lot of cool ideas present here that are just done in a very digestible fashion. on top of having just some remixes of really popular electronic cuts. This is as much a love letter to mashup culture as it is trying to make mashup culture a cool thing. And I'm alright with that wholeheartedly. Plus, not only does Daft Punk get to share a stage with DJ Shadow, but it's got a lot of other really cool DJs in the mix that haven't really been that notable in a long time before this game's release, like Jazzy Jeff. So I love this game, and I love what it does as far as bringing things together. It is on par with Rez as being a unique idea for doing a soundtrack with a bunch of different artists together. Number 3.
Blow your soul. Go ahead. Open it. If you dare.
Now, similarly to the previous soundtrack, this didn't really shape my music taste as much as it did excite me. Because, as many of you probably know, longtime subscribers of the channel, I was a heavy metal channel primarily at first. I discussed a lot of heavy metal music, and I've made very few videos, but I have spoken out as a member of the metal community, and I did a Let's Play of this game because I wanted to see how deep this soundtrack got. It embodied a lot of what my channel was about at the time, and I fucking love this thing. I like that even if it's in small doses, the extreme brackets of metal are still represented. Sure, some subgenres still don't have a whole lot of prominence. I don't think there's really any mathcore on here, and outside of a Dimmu Borgir cut, which, depending on who you ask, is okay, black metal doesn't have that much of a presence. Neither does extreme death metal. What is represented here is still a diverse set of metal tracks. I mean, it's got everything from Carcass to Dokken. I mean, that alone is impressive, but it's also got other bands that I hold near and dear to my heart, like Iced Earth and KMFDM and Mastodon and Ministry, early Ministry. There's a lot here that is very pleasing to a metal fan, and it's not just old stuff. They have newer bands in here like 3 Inches of Blood and Skeleton Witch, which I'm happy to see representation of. This just is representative of a lot that I love in heavy metal music, and I don't think anybody who likes metal music would have ever dreamed to see a lot of these bands together on a soundtrack for a video game about heavy metal, but they're here, they're done beautifully, and yeah, this is, without a doubt, as a metalhead, a huge collection of tracks. If you want an entry-level point to metal, this soundtrack, if you just want purely metal, is the best place to start, because it's got just about a little bit of everything.
Number 2.
Including a Smash Brothers game in itself already felt kind of like cheating, even though technically it is a compilation. It just also happens to be a compilation of the greatest music ever to be featured in a lot of video games. And Smash Brothers for the Wii U and DS was going to be the number 2 slot, because it is, as of right now, the most encompassing as far as video game songs compiled together into a greatest hit sort of fashion. It's got everything from Punch-Out to Zelda, there's some Pac-Man music now, there's Mega Man. This has so much going for it that it was the best. And that was the same until right about here. And here. This game has over 900 songs, and it's gonna be basically Smash Brothers Wii U, but with Castlevania and Gangplank Galleon. I mean, that means it's like one of the best things ever made, and I want this game now!
Number 1.
War. War never changes.
Now, there are plenty of other games that do the same thing this soundtrack does, but it's not to the same effect. Fallout 3 soundtrack just feels so well integrated into its game. The immersion is just one-to-one, and it feels perfect. I love all of these old school big beat, R&B, classic jams, and I think that this game just has the best collection of those tracks too. A lot of the same tracks are here that you'll see in BioShock and even some of the other Fallout games, but just the way that it's put together, the arrangement, it works. The dichotomy of destruction with upbeat, optimistic music is its best here. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that it's optional. You either hear it on those little drones or you hear it on your little Pip-Boy. But I don't know. It feels so perfect to do it in this game more than any other game in the franchise that I've played or any other game that's similar to this. I love these songs. Songs like Butcher Pete and Civilization are just my shit. I love me some Billie Holiday too. This is, again, I said it in my last video, I like old school lounge music, swing music. This is my shit. And this game just gets it. It gets it, and it's perfect, and it's just beautiful.
If you would like more video game compilations that I enjoy, linked in the description is a link to my top 25 that I made on my Rate Your Music page. There are 25 other video game compilations that I enjoy. You'll see multiple franchises, all that sort of stuff, because this one was a little bit harder to make. Hence why I also made it a top 25 instead of a top 50. I don't know what list is coming next, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any suggestions for future lists or topics you would like me to discuss on the channel. I've been Firewag, you guys will get to situations, and I'll see you another day.